The lane is quiet before dawn, and the fields are a dark, breathing shape beyond the low hedges. In the cottage, a slow ember glows like an eye inside the hearth, where last night's fire was banked under ash. Someone rises on creaking floorboards, careful not to wake the others. A shutter opens a finger's width and cool air moves across a clay cup and a wooden spoon left near the coals to stay warm. You can imagine it clearly without strain. A palm against a rough table, a breath of steam from a little kettle, the dull shine of an iron pot. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? If you enjoy quiet history like this, consider subscribing before you drift off. Tonight we will cross the threshold of small houses and walk the lanes at a pace that matches the wind, noticing what ordinary people, living close to the soil, truly ate in the long-ago years when morning light came from a small fire and the day's work began with the smell of damp earth and straw. Breakfast, when it appears at all, is a soft, practical thing. Many mornings, the first mouthful is not a meal but a steadying taste of warmth, a deep sip of weak ale or a cup of hot water flavored with a hint of herbs from the garden, perhaps mint, or a sprig of savory hung to dry over the rafters. On the table stands yesterday's loaf wrapped in cloth to keep out the draught. The loaf is not white or airy. It is compact and brown, made from grains that grow well in sturdy northern fields, rye that stands up to wind, barley that bends and recovers, oats that shrug off a hard rain. Wheat might appear, but not as a rule. In most cottages, flour is a blend, ground on a simple mill or bought already ground at the Lord's miller when the harvest allowed it. Slice the loaf, and you see a crumb speckled with husk and a smell that is both sour and nut-like. It is a food that welcomes butter if there is any, and if butter is scarce, it welcomes a smear of soft cheese, or a dip in a warm pottage that has been kept overnight near the embers. Pottage is the steady river running through the day. Imagine a thick simmer of grain and vegetables, sometimes with a ribbon of fat to carry flavor, sometimes with a few dried peas or beans to give body. It is more a method than a dish, and it lasts because it is always being born from what is at hand. In the morning, someone lifts the lid and stirs. The wooden spoon carves a long, slow circle, and whatever the garden offered the day before drifts past the surface. A cube of turnip, a slice of onion, a little cabbage, a handful of chopped leeks, a darker fleck where a sprig of thyme gave itself to the pot. If a shard of salted pork was saved from a market day, it melts into the mix, not as a centerpiece but as a quiet accent, a whisper of richness. In a cottage near the river, a small fish might be flaked into the pot if it was caught at dusk and lightly dried by the hearth overnight. In a house nearer the woods, mushrooms trimmed with care could have been added, the safest and most familiar kinds gathered from the edge of a path known for generations. The bread that carries the morning is shaped by work and by time. Flour is not uniform. It carries the character of fields and mills. In one hamlet, the stones of the mill bite coarse and leave the flour with a rustic chew. In another, the grind is finer, and the loaf rises a little more. The baker in a village might tend a communal oven, drawing out a wave of heat that serves several households after a long firing. In smaller places, people bake on heated stones or under iron lids nested in embers, accepting a denser crumb because it can be counted on. The dough is not rushed. It is kneaded on a table that also knows the weight of repaired boots and the marks of children's knives, and then it sits under a cloth, slow and patient, while the day wakes up. When the loaf is ready, it is food for traveling to the fields and food for returning from them, and when it grows a little stale, it becomes a gift to the pot, thickening and stretching the stew so that nothing is wasted. Dairy has its own quiet calendar. In the cool months, milk is richer, and butter is easier to keep. In the mild days of spring, there is fresh cheese, quick to make and meant to be eaten without delay. A small press sits on a shelf, and a linen cloth is washed and hung by the door where sun can dry it. Butter arrives by steady labor. A churn stands like a patient drum, and someone turns the handle or lifts and drops the dasher while the morning passes. The sound is unhurried and companionable, like footfalls in a long corridor. When the butter finally gathers, it is washed in cold water from the well and salted so that it will last until the next churning. Not everyone can keep it long in warm weather. Sometimes it is shaped small and used quickly, sometimes traded for grain or for tools. The whey left from cheese finds its way into porridge or into dough, souring and strengthening the flavors that return day after day. Midday is the true center of eating, not because it is grand, but because the body needs steadiness after hours of work. The fields call people outward, and tools scrape softly against soil. Then, when the sun is near its highest and arms are tired, the path home or the break at the edge of a hedgerow brings out the food. You will see a loaf wrapped in cloth, a flask holding thin ale or water scented with a taste of something green, and perhaps a pouch of dried beans cooked earlier, dressed with a spoon of fat saved from a rare occasion, or a handful of pickled cabbage bright enough to waken the mouth. If the cottage stands close enough, a pot waits by the hearth where the banked fire has coaxed bubbles up for hours. The lid is lifted and steam moves like a shawl, carrying the smell of roots and grain. Ladles pour into wooden bowls, rough trenchers of bread act as plates and then as part of the meal. Conversation is practical, the kind that helps work go well. The youngest eat first. Elders are not hurried. There is no ceremony in the modern sense, just a rhythm that repeats with small, seasonal changes. Grain is the architecture of the day, but gardens and hedgerows provide the detail work that makes the picture whole. Behind many cottages, a patch of earth holds rows of onions and leeks, a hardy cabbage or two, carrots shaped by soil into unexpected curves, broad beans on sturdy stems, peas climbing twine, and herbs that survive near the door, where heat spills from inside in winter and water is closest. These are not luxury accents. They are daily color, carried to the pot in aprons or baskets, washed in wooden bowls where the water goes gray and then dark as earth lets go. In autumn, the garden is a study in storage. Cabbages are layered with salt and crocks, turnips are buried in sand to hold their quiet sweetness, onions are braided and hung, dried peas and beans are poured into sacks. What cannot last is traded or shared, because when the year turns, everything that was saved becomes a plain kind of comfort, the memory of sunlight preserved in jars and sacks and strings. In some homes, especially near streams or where hills turn a wheel, grain is ground by water power and the flour is more even. In others, corn sit like small millstones on a bench, and the sound of grinding becomes part of the evening, a circular rhythm that fits between talk and silence. That sound means tomorrow's bread and tomorrow's porridge. It is as unremarkable and essential as the creak of a door. If you have ever imagined living like this, picture your hands repeating motions that learned themselves long ago, until they feel like resting when they are working, and working when they are at rest. Fish appear when rivers and coasts are near and when the weather is kind. Nets are mended in doorways, and small catches are eaten quickly or dried by the hearth on wooden frames. The flavor carries smoke and the cool mineral breath of water. Eggs arrive when chickens feel the lengthening light and the grass is alive with small life. A few eggs folded into a pottage or set over embers in a small pan can make an ordinary day feel steady and generous. Fruit tells time with a sweeter voice. In hedges and small orchards, there are berries and apples and pears, eaten fresh when they come or sliced and dried on racks to be pulled down and softened in warm liquid months later. A spoon of honey sweetens porridge on days when a neighbor brings a small comb, and the taste is meadow and sun and flowers in one slow breath. When people sit to eat, the table is set with the tools of hands rather than the tools of show. A knife is common, a spoon is friendly and frequently used. Fingers are not strange at the table. Bowls and mugs are of wood or sturdy fired clay. A cloth lies nearby to wipe the mouth or to catch a spill. Ale is weak by design, simple and reliable, brewed at home or bought in small quantities. It lowers the risk of bad water, and it comforts the spirit in a quiet way without making noise in the head. Sometimes a small jug of flavored water appears, where mint and a bit of apple peel have rested long enough to speak with a soft voice. The point is not novelty. The point is that one day flows into the next without friction, and food sustains that flow. Season shapes not only what is eaten but how it feels to eat it. In spring, meals lean green and hopeful, with tender leaves waking up the pot and early milk bringing a freshness that tastes like sunlight through a thin curtain. In summer, the table holds more crunch and more scent, with herbs at their strongest and the heat asking for foods that satisfy without weighing down the limbs. Autumn is abundance gathered modestly, a season of careful work as much as of flavor, when baskets are carried and fires are kept low and steady to dry, smoke, and store. Winter is patient and brown and calm, the garden tucked in, the pot of pottage deeper and the bread darker, the comfort of a long-cooked dish answering the cold with a kind of honesty. Tell me in the comments if you'd last a week like this, moving with the year and letting the pot and the loaf mark the time more faithfully than a bell. Lunch, taken as the main meal in the middle of the day, is not a sequence of courses but a single, generous attention. The pot sits at the heart of it, a steady composition of grain and garden. In places where barley grows well, barley thickens like a friendly hand. Where oats are common, the texture is creamier, and porridge feels almost like a blanket. Rye gives a deeper color to bread and a slightly sour edge that wakes the mouth. Beans and peas are not the last resort but a reliable partner, softening and becoming themselves only after a long soak and a slow simmer. With them, a small piece of fat can carry flavors across the whole bowl, making each bite feel complete. A sprinkle of chopped leeks or the last leaves of something green bring a brightness that has nothing to do with extravagance, and everything to do with balance. This is food that refuels without demanding attention. Dinner at night is gentle. After the day has ended and tools have been put away and the door pushed closed against the wind, a small meal draws people back together. It may be the same pottage, grown richer with hours, or a little porridge made thin so that it slides easily from wooden spoon to mouth. There might be a wedge of cheese, a single onion sliced and softened in a pan, a heel of bread warmed by the fire so that it releases its smell again, a cup of warm drink sweetened a little if honey is available. The cottage grows quiet as stomachs settle and shoulders drop. The fire gives a slow orange light to the wall, and voices soften to fit the space. Outside, an owl rearranges the night. Inside, someone fixes the lid to the pot and banks the ashes, because tomorrow will want the same steady kindness. Preserving food is not a dramatic act here. It is a habit that touches everything. Even the word preserving suggests high effort, but the truth is more like doorways propped open to let air pass, cloth tied carefully, salt used like a tool, cool corners of the floor used like a cupboard. Cabbage cut thin and salted in rooms where it will not be disturbed. Beans dried on strings and racks. Apples sliced and hung. Small fish split and set near the smoke where they become denser and more purposeful. Grain kept dry in bins where mice do not find them. Cheese moved regularly so its edges dry evenly and it keeps without showing tiredness. These are not special projects so much as the background hum of keeping a household calm through the year. Would you prefer rye or oats for your daily loaf, if you had to choose one and carry that choice through all 4 seasons? Across regions, details change, but the pattern holds. In low, damp places, more oats. On higher, drier ground, more rye and barley. Near the coasts and rivers, fish are a more frequent guest. Where soil is thin, people lean a little more on dairy and on clever ways to stretch what grows. In dense forests, mushrooms and nuts are gathered when they are safe and familiar. In open fields, more wheat appears in good years, and lighter loaves grace the table at times, though not every day. The taste of a village is not a uniform signature. It is a cluster of preferences that come from land and weather and what people learn from parents and neighbors. Yet, in each of these places, if you step softly to the door and listen, you will hear the spoons stirring the same kind of gentle circle, and you will smell bread, and you will see bowls set out in the same arrangement. Tools matter, even when they are simple. The cauldron that hangs from an iron hook blackened by years, the pan with a long handle made so it can sit near coals without the cook crouching too close, the wooden ladle with a lip worn smooth, the board with a shallow groove for keeping juices. These are specific companions. The hearth is not just a place to place things. It is a source of timing and flavor. Coals in one corner hold a slow glaze on an onion. Bright embers at the center give a quick boil to a pot, and then soften to a simmer when ash is dragged across. A damp log at the edge smokes, and keeps insects away from what is hanging to dry. Spices in the imported and costly scents are rare in ordinary homes. Flavor comes from slow cooking, from a spoon of rendered fat used with restraint, from herbs cut and crushed at the last moment, from the sour-sweet memory built into yesterday's bread when it returns as a thickener today. Breakfast seems small by modern measures, but it is precisely tuned. If there is heavy work at once, a bowl of hot porridge steadies the hands. Oats loosen into comfort, and barley holds its shape a little more. A trickle of honey or a spoon of dried fruit folded in on better days turns the bowl into something almost luxurious. On lighter mornings, a slice of bread rubbed with a clove of garlic, or with a handful of chopped greens pressed into it with salt is enough to set the body on its way. A mug of warm, weak ale or water kissed by a sprig of herbs is not indulgence, but good sense, a way of introducing the stomach to the day. Children take their share first, not as a rule written anywhere, but because it makes the evening go easier when small bellies are quiet early. If you enjoy quiet history like this, consider subscribing before you drift off, because these small details are the true map of how people lived. On the road, food fits into pockets of time. A traveler carries hard crusts, a small pouch of dried peas, perhaps a piece of cured fish or a wedge of hard cheese, and trusts to finding hot water or a friendly hearth. Wayside hospitality is not a feast, it is a seat by the fire and a chance to warm something that has known the inside of a pot before. Fairs and markets offer tastes that rarely reach the cottage on ordinary days. A fried cake on a special afternoon, a slice of a finer loaf shared among many, a sip of something stronger in winter traded with care and respect. But these are not the rhythm of the week. They are punctuation, small sparks in a sentence written mostly in quiet strokes. Salt is a faithful servant. It draws moisture out when that is needed. It makes cabbage keep its crisp talk through winter. It helps a small piece of meat season many bowls. It sharpens and steadies flavors so that simple foods taste complete. Vinegar has a place too, made at home when fruit wine turns and then kept as a tart companion that answers heavy flavors and cleans a board. Together with smoke and air and cloth and patience, these tools let a household build a soft wall against hunger that rises and falls with weather and luck. Children learn the taste of seasons by biting into them. In spring, a raw onion pulled and rinsed at the pump tastes like a mild dare and a promise that warmth is returning. In summer, berries stain fingers and tongues and make quiet games. In autumn, the first slice of new cheese is a small event. In winter, the crust from the bottom of the pot, where the porridge has caramelized just a little, is a prize to be bargained over. They help pick stones from grain before grinding, a job that saves teeth and keeps the corn honest. They scrape carrots and bruise herbs and carry small jugs and learn the calm of repetition, which is a kind of safety all by itself. Lunch in harvest time is broader but not louder. More hands gather at the edge of a field or fill a cottage to standing. Bowls make their way along a line of reach and nods. A pot of peas enriched with onions and a little fat stands next to a rough salad of chopped cabbage and herbs dressed with vinegar and a pinch of salt. Bread is cut thick. Cheese is set out. Hard apples, the sort that travel without bruising, are passed from hand to hand. A jug moves from one to another and comes back lighter. The talk is as much about the weather as it seems, because weather is the line that connects every bite to tomorrow's bites. Dinner in the colder months leans toward the slow and the brown. White beans surrender their shape and give a cream to the liquid that feels like rest. Barley kernels, well rinsed, swell and make a soft pop under the teeth. A few scraps saved from better days add a roundness without taking the stage. The hearth glows. A draft slides under the gap in the door, and somebody tucks a piece of cloth along the sill to soften it. The last bite is not sweet unless there is dried fruit in a jar and reason to open it. Often the last bite is the last bite because sleep is near. Outside, the lane belongs to the wind. Inside, someone clears the bowls and sets them near the hearth to dry in the gentle heat, while the stories of the day go silent one by one. Food rules, both spoken and unspoken, grow from prudence. Waste is not romanticized. It is simply avoided because each seed and each handful of flour has a history of effort behind it. A loaf is cut carefully so that the soft center and the firmer heel both find their best use. The pod is stirred from the bottom to keep it from catching, and if it does catch, the cook knows how to save the unburned part and make a pleasing dish of it. Portions are not measured by scale but by the eye that knows who will be threshing tomorrow and who will be minding the goats, whose appetite is a little smaller, and who has grown quickly and eats like a sturdy young tree drinks water. Markets connect the cottage to the wider world. A sack of grain is weighed. A small pot of honey trades for a length of cloth. A handful of dried mushrooms, gathered carefully in a known wood, brings home salt. Sometimes a spice that traveled a long way appears in a pinch at a festival, and the memory of it lingers for years, not because it is essential, but because it shows that taste can be expanded by a single careful addition. Most days, though, what is bought is not what creates the meal. It is what enables it: salt, a bit of oil pressed from seeds, a new pot when the old one cracks beyond mending, a sharper knife that will ease work for months to come. The cottage kitchen is a landscape of surfaces, each with a work. A plank near the door for scraping mud from carrots. A table scarred by years of kneading and cutting. A shelf where bowls sit upside down, drying slowly from the warmth of the fire. The ceiling beams hold bundles of herbs turned dry as paper, their scent released when a leaf is crushed between finger and thumb. Baskets hang in a dark corner where mice cannot leap. A hook near the hearth holds a cloth that catches steam and then dries quickly, as the fire draws the damp into itself. None of this is on display. It is simply how things are arranged so that hands remember without thinking. Have you ever imagined living like this, where each object has a patient place and food grows not only in the earth but also in the routine of tending and saving? Breakfast can arrive in the fields, if the distance from cottage to furrow is long. Then a pocket holds a slice of bread and a lump of cheese wrapped in a square of cloth, and the first bite is taken while a mist lifts from stubble or from new shoots. A few mouthfuls and the body warms by movement. Later, a break allows a drink from a leather flask and a bite of something softened in the mouth while eyes measure rows and hands adjust the pace. The purpose of breakfast is not pleasure alone. It is also to put calm in the body so labor is steady rather than sharp and fading. Lunch is kinder when a small pickle appears, a drift of sour cabbage or a strip of beet softened in a jar, because the sharpness makes each swallow feel clearer. An onion cooked long enough to go sweet is as welcome as a festival if it comes in the middle of a hard day. Bread, when toasted on a clean flat stone by the fire and brushed with a bit of fat, becomes a warm comfort. It does not need more. In some places, a thin pancake of batter poured onto a heated iron and flipped once serves as a quick midday food, folded over chopped herbs and eaten standing up. Such small variations fit into the larger sameness without fuss. Dinner returns the day to quiet. A pot of oats cooked with scraped carrot and a hint of onion can be as satisfying as anything more elaborate. A bowl of peas thickened with a torn heel of bread and brightened with a little vinegar reaches the same goal by a different path. A little milk warmed and poured over bread cubes allows the scent of grain to rise again, and a sprinkle of ground dried herbs reminds the tongue of summer. The embers light in the hearth slows the eye. Beeswax candles give a steadier flame. Tallow gives a softer, smokier one. Sometimes there is no candle at all, only the fire and the moon reaching in under the shutter as the night leans over the roof. In years of plenty, the bread grows lighter when more wheat flour is available. In leaner seasons, the loaves are darker and heavier, compact with rye or barley. In all cases, a good loaf is one that cuts clean without crumbling and that keeps until the next bake. The crust protects. The crumb sustains. The smell is the simple language of well-being. Flour dust softens the edges of the table. Children draw letters in it with their fingertips and are scolded gently because every pinch matters. Yet even that play becomes part of the house's memory, because flour dust is easy to brush into a bowl and shake back into the sack before the next need. Water is fetched and carried, and this alone shapes meals. The distance to the well or the stream means every wash, every soak, every simmer is counted. Dishes are wiped and aired before they are washed. Vegetables are brushed in the open air before water touches them. Soaking beans is done in a vessel set near the bed in winter, where body heat helps the process along, and near the door in summer, where a breeze keeps them sweet. The consideration given to water keeps the kitchen calm and the meals regular. The measure of taste is straightforward. If the bowl is offered and the spoon returns to it without pause, the balance is right. If someone adds a pinch of salt and then sets the pot back so the flavor spreads, the next bowl will be better. If the bread is a day older and needs warming, a moment near the coals returns it to its best self. There is no impatience in this way of cooking. The clock is the softness of beans, the way barley swells, the look of a spoon standing upright in the pot, and then leaning slowly as the heat loosens the mixture. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner do not compete. They are parts of a circle. The last spoonful of tonight's pottage may become the first thickener of tomorrow's. The last heel of bread may become the anchor of a midday broth. The rind of a cheese may perfume a pot and then be discarded. Even the ash has its small uses, polishing a pan or sweetening the acidity of a stubborn mixture. Nothing is grand. Everything is particular. When storms come and keep people close to their cottages, meals become even simpler. A pot is stretched with extra water and more time. A carrot is sliced thinner. A jar of pickles is opened with respect and used to give interest to the sameness. On bright days after rain, mushrooms appear along a known line of trees, and those who know them add a few to the pot, bringing the smell of the woods to the room without leaving the bench. On the hottest days, the fire is kept low and a cold bowl of yesterday's porridge is loosened with a little milk and eaten with pleasure, because the body asks for nothing more. There are special days made special by work well done rather than by show. After hay has been brought in and stacked, bread and cheese and onions and a pot of beans feel like a fine gift. After a successful day mending a roof or repairing a plow, a pancake fried in a little fat, sprinkled with chopped herbs, tastes like a celebration. The extraordinary is not strange food, it is usual food at the perfect moment. The memory of it lasts, and the taste is bound to the sound of laughter that fits easily into the quiet. If you listen closely to the kitchens of the past, you hear the same sentences repeated, and none of them are loud. Stir from the bottom. Test with the back of the spoon. Save the last piece for tomorrow. Cover the pot and set it near the warm corner. These are instructions and also a way of speaking about care. Food is the way patience becomes visible. The person who cooks pays attention to every small sign. A bean pinched between nails. A grain burst but not dissolving. A leaf bright but softened. When the bowl is handed to someone else, it carries that attention with it, and the house feels safer. At breakfast, the quiet is more complete because the day has not started shouting yet. A bite of bread, a sip from a warm mug, a spoonful or two of porridge, a piece of cheese cut with the same knife used to shape a steak the night before. Eyes meet and then look down again, because the path ahead is already in the room, the field, the animals, the wash, the repair, the journey to the mill, the slow counting of stored food. It does not take many words to equip a morning. The food does most of the speaking. If you enjoy quiet history like this, consider subscribing before you drift off, because each of these small scenes adds up to a clearer picture of ordinary life than any banner or battle could. Lunch carries the body through the longest stretch. It is eaten where it makes sense, at the edge of a field, by a hedge, on a low stool inside if rain insists. A bowl, a spoon, a crust. The heat of the pot is carried in the thickness of its clay. The taste is the same taste from yesterday and the day before, with a small variation, because variation is not the point. Reliability is. The mind settles when meals settle. A person can plan and hope and endure if the next bowl is already halfway made by what was saved from the last. Dinner closes the day as gently as a door pushed shut with the shoulder. The light goes, the pot gives one last sigh, the bowls are scraped with bread so that nothing is lost. A piece of dried fruit may appear at the end of a week if the stores are kind. A little milk poured into a cup and warmed feels as friendly as a hand. The bed waits, the straw fluffed and smoothed, the blankets folded back. The hearth is rubbed out so it can be woken again. Tell me in the comments if you'd last a week like this, letting the same flavors become comfort instead of boredom, trusting the pot and the loaf and the shelf and the hook and the quiet skill of hands. What did people actually eat? They ate what they grew and kept, what they could store safely, what their neighbors traded, what the weather allowed. Grains first, rye, barley, oats, made into bread and porridge and pottage. Vegetables from the garden, onion, leek, cabbage, carrot, turnip, chopped and simmered until they softened and gave up their strengths. Beans and peas for lasting fullness and gentle strength. Milk turned into butter and cheese when it could be, and used fresh when it could not. Fish when water was near and the day was good for it. Eggs when the season favored them. Fruit in season, dried fruit when the jar was opened and shared. Flavor cared for by salt, herbs, and thyme. It is a list when written that way, but in the cottage it was never a list. It was a table with a bowl and a loaf and a spoon, and steam that carried the day to the face of the eater in a friendly way, and footsteps on a floor that knew every foot by heart. In the very last light, with coals giving a pulse against the underside of the pot, and the room carrying the smell of wood and warm clay, the day's meals fold into memory and leave behind a kind of quiet gratitude. The bread held. The pot gave. The water was enough. The pickles stayed sharp. The milk did not turn. The onions kept their cheerful honesty. Someone pauses at the door and hears the wind move low along the hedge. Another checks the latch and lifts the lid a final time to be sure the pot is set just right for morning. The floor cools. The spoon dries. A kettle is moved to the back where a few embers will be enough to heat it before dawn. If you enjoy quiet history like this, consider subscribing before you drift off, and sleep well, knowing that the ordinary people who once lived by the glow of these same small fires were fed by meals as unassuming and sufficient as the ones you can almost taste now, in the calm of this hour.